we're going to jump into the Clark Kent costume analysis series that we've been doing. And this week we are jumping into the Dean Cain version of Clark Kent from the Lois and Clark, The New Adventures of Superman TV series. And Dean Cain obviously played Superman and Clark Kent for 4 seasons of that show. And we are going to look at all the different parts of the Clark Kent costume as we do in this part of the show. And we're going to start off with the glasses. And here we have a modern take on the glasses. They are definitely like a wireframe for the bottom half of the spectacles, but with a different design, a brown kind of orangey look with a different type of shape to them at the top.
Yeah, I mean they're very particular for the time period.
Mm-hmm.
Dean is the first one to not wear the kind of wider framed Clark Kent glasses, but that was just more of it was the style at the time, to quote The
Yep.
Simpsons. And they fit that version of the character. I mean, most of his disguise actually is other parts uh, of his face. So the glasses are just kind of like the just another accessory. But I always kind of liked his glasses. He does switch them up at one point around the end of season 2.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, right at the end of season 2, he switches them out again, and yeah, I like him.
Yeah, I mean they're definitely more contemporary. Um, I think we got so used to the older versions, of the glasses that that just having this contemporary look is just, it just looks different, and I think it looks good.
Yeah, definitely. And then we move on to Clark Kent's suit. And as you mentioned a couple of weeks ago, Michael, there was a whole website back in the day for Clark Kent's ties
Yep.
for the series, and definitely the 1990s wider tie style. The jackets were very much more colorful. The shirts, gone are the days of the very plain, everyday suit that Clark Kent would wear in the 70s and obviously in the 50s with George Reeves, and that was done for a budget reason. With the George Reeves series, he would wear the same suit all the time throughout the whole season, so that they could just use the shots that they needed to, especially with him doing the shirt rip and what have you, on racing off into the storeroom to change into Clark Kent, and they would do things out of order all the time. Where he, obviously, the bigger budget and more focus on the fashions of the time were obviously what they were aiming for, and so we saw Clark Kent in very many different suits and ties and shirts throughout the season, and pants. They didn't always match. They weren't always a suit, but they did usually have him in a tie and jacket.
Yep. Yeah, and towards season 4, they even started kind of throwing in like 3-piece suits
Mm-hmm.
where he would wear a vest. But mostly it was kind of it's not as formal as the previous Clark Kent,
Yeah.
more fashionable. And that was, again, very much, the show, Lois and Clark, was geared as if Smallville was the high school drama, teenage drama, young adult drama with superpowers. Lois and Clark was the office romantic comedy with superpowers. So he didn't have to be as formal, but he usually was he usually had a jacket at least when he came into the office.
Yeah, he was definitely more casual, more relaxed. Um, you could tell that the top button, either the top button isn't buttoned or the tie is kind of loose. Uh, it just looks, he's more relaxed. I mean, it's more, in the 90s, it was that kind of thing. You came in with either a sport coat or a nice suit. You took it off, put it behind your chair, and loosened the tie, and went to work. And that's kind of how it was, and that's kind of how they represented it, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And then one thing that did set Dean Kane's Clark Kent apart from his Superman was the hair. He had more of a loose, obviously very stylish type of hair for the 90s, and was more relaxed, where his Superman, as we saw in the first image we showed, had more of the slick back look, and the hair was off his face, where in the Dean Cain Clark Kent version, the hair came down for his Clark Kent. So they switched it around a little bit.
Yeah, and again, that was more of the aesthetic they were going for. Clark was the emphasis. Superman was important, but it was Lois and Clark, the New Adventures of Superman. So having him have the more varied hairstyle, and sometimes it was a little more out there than it really needed to be. But it was interesting that eventually they did settle on Superman having like the hair completely slicked back, which I guess, when you have super speed, you can do that. Yeah.
Just have to fly out the window, and it just naturally forms that way.
Yeah.
That's what it was. Yeah, no, I did like how in the beginning he did have that almost little curl as Clark instead of having it as Superman. Of course, they were going with the Clark is the man and Superman is kind of the disguise type of look. So the hair, yeah, and it changed a little bit through the seasons, obviously. But no, I think I always think it looked pretty good. I mean, they tried to style it, and it wasn't always styled perfectly. But I think as a whole, it looked very good.
Yeah, and so for me, Dean Cain's Clark Kent, which was the focus of the series, was definitely up there with like an 8 out of 10 for me, because it just fit the show. It was all about Lois and Clark. So the fact that more attention was given to his Clark Kent persona, as far as the costumes and the look was concerned, went fine with me. I was happy with that.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. I'll give it an 8 as well.
I'm definitely going to give it an 8. Yes.
Excellent. So we are all in agreement on that one, and that is our Clark Kent analysis for Dean Cain's version of the character for this week. Next week we move on to Smallville, I believe is next up in the line, and we will look at Tom Welling's version of Clark Kent. That's going to be a little more tricky, because we might have to look towards the latter episodes of season 10, where he was Clark Kent in the Daily Planet, which is what we can do for a comparison. So we might look at that side of things when we return to this segment next week.